Today we will have the discussion in English. Sorry. So welcome to today's event. We will have such program that first we will screen a short documentary film, 10 minutes documentary film from the refugee camps, the Western Saharan refugee camps in Algiers. That's a film made by myself. I will tell a little bit about the film after because I have visited. I'm lucky that I have had the possibility to visit the camps. And then we have here a big delegation of 6 persons from the refugee camps. From the refugee camps in Algiers, Western Sahrawis. And after the film, Khalihena will present the delegation. They are all students from Tifariti University, which is, I think, the one and only university project in refugee camp. But you will hear a little bit more about that after. And then after a short introduction of the delegation, we will have a panel discussion. With the Palestinian, with the situation in Palestine and Western Sahara. So yes, so I think the event will last for 1.5 hours, 2 hours. Okay, let's start with the film. I will tell a little bit about this. So I have had the chance to visit the refugee camps in Algiers 2 times, and the material in the film is filmed during these 2 visits in 2011 and 2015. And this film, I think it's a little bit more like a travel diary of these trips that I had chance to make. And in the film, you will see starring Najm, who is also visiting here us, so you might recognize him. And yes, of course, this visits to the refugee camps was a really touching and a big life-changing experience for me. And that's also why I'm really happy to have the delegation now in Finland, kind of to give that opportunity to host the people that were hosting me in the refugee camps, to host them now in Finland. And the first time when I visited the camps, I was 18 years old, and I went there, so it was really also exciting and really big experience for me. And I really hope that this experience to come to Finland is also big and interesting for our guests here, and I think it has been. Okay, let's see the film. And if you have questions about the film after, I can answer. And Najm can also tell how it was to be starring in such a great documentary.
Ahora estamos aquí.
Sí.
En ese sitio, esa parte.
Entiendo, sí.
Ahora no estamos aquí.
Sí, aquí.
La mayoría de la gente vino en pie, o sea que salían de la ciudad y tal, cuando entraban los marroquíes.
Ihmiset lähtivät pakoon sotaa. Ainoa vapaa suunta oli autiomaa. He kuvittelivat lähtevänsä muutamaksi päiväksi, ehkä viikoksi tai kuukaudeksi. Nyt siitä on kulunut jo 40 vuotta, ja kotimaa on jäänyt hiekkamuurin taakse.
Los primeros muros que se han hecho en el Sahara empezado por este, el primer muro. Luego el quinto, que tiene unos 670 kilómetros, y este sexto y último muro. Estos muros se hicieron por etapas, porque se iba a ver beneficiando de su defensa.
It's a piece of oil and exploitation here near the wall. This one, it can kill a person or two persons if it's.
Pakoon lähtenyt sukupolvi juuri ja juuri vielä muistaa elämän tuon muurin toisella puolella. He muistavat meren ja kalat. Mutta pikkuhiljaa aavikko ja aika vie muistotkin. Seuraava sukupolvi on syntynyt pakolaisleireille. Heille tästä välitilasta on tullut pysyvä. He eivät ole koskaan olleet muurin toisella puolella. Tuo kotimaa on heille vain kuvia ja kertomuksia. Teetä juodaan perinteen mukaisesti aina 3 kupillista. Kitkerä kuin elämä, makea kuin rakkaus ja pehmeä kuin kuolema. Muuta täällä ei ole kuin vain aikaa ja odottamista. Tulevaisuutta on vaikea kuvitella. Pakolaisleirithän ovat väliaikaisia. Ei niillä kuulu olla muuta tulevaisuutta kuin loppu. Siksi on elettävä vain nyt ja tässä. On vain yksi kuumuuden haalistama toive tulevaisuudelle. Päästä takaisin kotiin, kotiin, jota ei nuoren sukupolven elämässä ole koskaan ollutkaan.
إذا الشعب يوما أراد الحياة فلا بد أن يستجيب القدر ولا بد للليل أن ينجلي ولا بد للقيد أن ينكسر.
فلاحة الطار الجير فلاحة استعدمون مروحة الطار الجير فلاحة قرية الجير فلاحة الطار الجير فلاحة استعدمون مروحة الطار الجير فلاحة.
Pakolaisuus on arkea nykyään. Oikeastaan kaikki täällä voisi yhtä hyvin vaikuttaa viihtyisältä ja pysyvältä. Jokin vain ympärillä muistuttaa jatkuvasti. Tämä on pakolaisleiri, ei tänne kuulu asettua. Mutta ehkä siihen on vain totuttava. Tätä on elämä maapallolla tänään. Tervetuloa.
Demand some experts from Israel and France and America to do something can stop the Sahrawis, and they advise or give some advice to the Kingdom Moroccan Hassan to build this wall to divide the land into two.
Unohdetuksi jääminen on kohtalokasta. 10 vuosia pakolaisleireillä, eikä mitään muutosta. Ei muuttumattomuus kiinnosta ketään. Päät kääntyvät pian muualle, sinne missä tapahtuu, sinne missä roiskuu veri. Odottavan aika on pitkä. Eivätkä huudot aavikolta tunnu kuuluvan kauas.
Thank you. Maybe Najim, you want to say a few words about the...
Thank you for, first of all, let me say thank you for having us here. Really, this film took me years ago to... I still remember all of the steps that we did together. It was very nice days. We traveled a lot. We suffered a lot, but we cared to did something fantastic. So really, it's very, very nice film. What I want to say, I will say thank you, Kertu, but also I encourage all those who are interested in media to document the Sahrawi life, because it's very important to do this kind of works. And you are welcome, and thank you, Kertu. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Najim. Good. I think that was a good short introduction to the situation, and at least you could see some of the paysage. I mean, the landscape, how it looks like in the camps where our delegation members come from. So maybe Halihena, I will invite you now here with me. Halihena, as the representative of the delegation, you can tell a little bit more. First of all, who are the Sahrawis, who are you, and who are the delegation members that we have here today?
Thank you very much, Kertu. Yeah, thank you very much, Kertu, for this film, and thank you for all of you who came here today. We are very happy to be in Finland to tell the story of the Sahrawi people. This is a small delegation representing the whole Sahrawi refugees, young students from the University of Tifariti, which is another expression from Sahrawi people of their will and determination to enjoy their right to self-determination. Western Sahara is the last colony in Africa, has been colonized by Spain from 1884 until 1975. Unfortunately, the colonizer, which is still considered in the view of international law, Spain, withdrawn without organizing a referendum, which is the only way to come out according to the international law from uncolonized territory, and left it to be invaded by two neighboring countries, Morocco from the north and Mauritania from the south. Sahrawi people continued their struggle. They sought refuge in 1975, in 1976 in Algeria. That's where we, as a delegation, were born, as second generation Sahrawi refugee camps, and grown up, study, and that's where rose the idea of Tifariti University. Tifariti University is a simple idea to express our determination to provide Sahrawi students who are based in the Sahrawi refugee camps and liberated zones that is controlled by Polisario Front and our government, by these chances of continuing study. Basically, it was created in 2012, and so far we have only 4 institutions, small ones: Paramedical, Languages, Institute of Pedagogic Institute, and Administration and Management, and basically to support Sahrawi institutions that are functioning in exile as a part of the Sahrawi community established in the Tindouf city, and that has been run by Sahrawi totally for many years now. This university also works or aiming at reaching the academic forums and bring the story and the message of the Sahrawi people to people of science. That means people to listen to rational argumentation, people who listen to science in order to advocate for what is legal for Sahrawi people, in this case, self-determination, their permanent sovereignty over their natural resources. And we, as a part of this university, is will, and we came here to Finland to meet our counterparts, students in universities, and different actors to update them on what is going on in Western Sahara, which is unfortunately again presents a failure for the international community to find a solution for a clear standing legal case of decolonization. This process led by United Nations after 16 years of war from 1975 to 1991 came to an end in 2020, which we as a new generation feel very sorry to hear. To see war again in Western Sahara is very disappointing and is very frustrating for us. And to see the failure of the international community, despite well-argumented legal rights of Sahrawi people, all these efforts fails, makes us really frustrated. And that's why we are here, to raise more awareness and to say that time is still, and we as Sahrawis, despite all this frustration, despite all these sufferings, we still think that there is a chance when we all collect and unify our efforts, make pressure on our governments, our representatives, our institutions, to make pressure on actors who are intervened now in Western Sahara and trying to exchange or change the nature of the conflict, the nature of the demographic component of the territory, to stop and to let this peaceful solution come, and let the new generation of Sahrawi people, of Moroccan people, of the whole region, of the world live in peace and stability and develop together a better future for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Khalin. Maybe I can ask you one more question, just for those who don't know. Polisario Front is the liberation movement of Sahrawi people. And maybe there were some other. If you have any questions, if there's some terms that you don't know, you can ask. But I was thinking, because now during your visit here, we have been, as Khalihena said, we met some student unions in Finland and trying to establish some contact between the Sahrawi students of Tifariti University from the camps, from the refugee camps, with the other universities around the world. And I think that the idea of this Tifariti University is really, as you said, like really like challenging project and really idealistic somehow. Can you tell a little bit more about the structure and the idea behind this establishment of a university in the refugee camps?
As you may be aware, Sahrawi people has diversified their ways of struggle for many years. They didn't say just that armed struggle is enough. And they used culture, they used social exchange, they used academic exchange as a way to defend their rights. And in this regard comes many initiatives, not only not only Tifariti University. We have, for instance, the first film festival organized in the refugee camps, Fi Sahara, that takes place every year in Western Sahara. But we have also Sahara Marathon, where different sportsmen and women came to Sahrawi refugees every year in February to join Sahrawis and live with us our conditions and participate in this event that shed light on this forgotten conflict. We have also Tifariti event. This is for artists. Came down, and we used to go to liberated zones, to Tifariti, and organize their exhibitions for their work and introduce Sahrawis to the power of these possibilities, and also convince our generations that struggle does not mean or only limited on armed struggle. Yes, it is legitimate for any oppressed people to do their or to seek their rights by all means, including armed struggle, but there are different ways also to transmit our message. In this regard comes the idea of Tifariti University. Morocco has been in Western Sahara since 1975. there with their military, with their investments, with their settlers, but never built a university for Sahrawi students in occupied Western Sahara. So we, from refugee camps, wanted to say to the occupiers, to their allies, that we as Sahrawis are determined and we never lose hope. And that's why we created in 2012, University of Tifariti. Simple idea where we want to attract attention by all means. We want to say through these different initiatives, including University of Tifariti, that we are existed. We are a people that knows clearly what they want. And we are determined, and that's why we have been living for many years in an inhospitable place like Tindouf. If some Algerians are here, they know what does it mean, Tindouf. To live in a desert where it reaches 50 degrees in summer, this tells something. This tells many things behind this resistance, and we want to send from there a message of hope, but also a message of determination for all actors. But that Sahrawis, as they have established their state in exile, which is also unique experience in the whole human being experience, functioning state in exile, that have a full membership in the African Union alongside 55 African nations. We wanted to say that Sahrawi students, Sahrawi scholars, Sahrawi teachers deserve better than this. And the idea of Tifariti that, as I mentioned, based on 4 institutes, simple institutes, it's no more than 300 students per year in each promotion. But this is a good and strong message from our side to say that Sahrawis deserve to have 1 hour of democracy where they choose if they want to be integrated with Morocco, if they want to be independent state, or if they want other options. That's all these efforts is to say that 1 hour is better for Sahrawis, but also for Moroccans, and then for all the rest of the region and the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe last question about the university, then we can move to the panel discussion. But since we have here students from all of the departments of the university, I wanted to ask, maybe one of you want to also answer, or maybe Khalihena will answer however you like. How is the basic student life of a... Yes, maybe the other audience will not understand then. But yeah, you can I was thinking about how is the student life like. For example, if you're studying linguistics or pedagogy, how does it look like? Do you have lessons every day where you go, and are the teachers also Sahrawi teachers from the camps? Paquina. Si quieres puedes en español. Yes, en Hassania. Okay.
No problem. Yeah. Sahrawis naturally are shy, by the way. But yeah, I will transmit that message. I will take example of languages. We have started with the School of English in 2005, thanks to collaboration we had with Americans. And they established the school. That's where I attained my first classes in English in 2005. These volunteers come from America, USA, to teach English for Sahrawis. And throughout this idea, we maintained these institutions, and Sahrawi young generation became more interested in English because it is very useful language that they discover that it can be used in every context, especially for those who want to continue their educational careers. In this school, we have a normal program, Cambridge program of English for beginners, and then advanced to advanced. It started with exams, simple exams to identify the level of each student and then classify students in different classes. After years, Sahrawis became able to produce teachers of English. And now these schools, we have 3 of them. They started in Smara camp, but we copied the experience in Auserd and Bujdur now. And we have Sahrawi teachers who teach Sahrawis English. And this is something that is very fantastic and that is very productive for us and shows that we also can stand on our feet if we get support. The other institutes, like pedagogic one, is mainly to build the capacities and recycle the capacities of Sahrawi teachers to adopt new methods of teaching. And thanks to collaboration that we have with, for instance, the Autonomy University of Madrid, we provide these pedagogic classes for teachers and for those who want to become teachers. It's a normal program, despite all the challenges. By the way, we are flexible. We know that sometimes we don't have resources to provide transport for all students, so we adapt the program accordingly. Sometimes we have a sandstorm that stops education for 1 week. And sometimes, because of the heat, we should intensify the training programs from January to April, and then we should stop because people then think only about shelter during summer. So, but the content is the same in the whole world, and we adopt the same methodology adopted by Spanish, well advanced, and we try to, follow up new versions of methodology adopted by different institutions. So it's an attempt to be normal, despite all sufferings. But yeah, we sing, we dance, we work, we travel, we host people in our a modest tent. That's what happened with Kertu, and that's what makes people, feeling very Sahrawis. By the way, we as Sahrawis have a program of vacations in peace, where we go while children in summer and spend 2 months with European families, and now with Algerian families too. We go, we take our children because of the heat, and bring them to Spain, and they stay with families. This program that we all benefited from, we are here. I went to Granada in Spain in 1998, and to Italy in 2000. This has built our characteristics as open-minded generation. We accept different religions, different languages, because we opened our eyes on the different and the other while we were children. So, and that's why this program is very important for us. And we encourage our government and our liberation movement to expand this experience. And that's why we emphasize always on exchange. We want people to come down to refugee camps, to liberated zones, but we want them also to go to occupied territories and witness what is going in there. And by the way, regarding occupied territories, the European Union, in its attempt to justify its illegal agreements that they had with Morocco, which previously included Western Sahara waters and lands, Polisario has brought them to the justice. And the European Court of Justice has made its final decision on 4th of last October and said clearly that they tried, instead of consent, I'm not legal, but the consent means that the original people, say their word about this agreement, if they accept or not. They made a process called consultation. And the European Union went to the occupied part and met with Sahrawis there and the Moroccan settlers. And in their report, they said that 75% of the people they met that pretended that benefiting from these agreements, they are Moroccans. So just to say that despite all these legalities on our side, and we as Sahrawis, despite we are few, we depend on this international solidarity. And that's why we have Vacations in Peace, Fi Sahara, Sahara Marathon, and Tifariti University. And we combine, as Sahrawis, I combined very well between my educational career and my nature as a Sahrawi-born refugee because of military invasion. And that's what we are trying here to do as Sahrawi students. We are not finished. We are not independent. We are not enjoying all the rights that you all enjoy as independent states. So we need to have the formula or the equation to combine between two things, advocating for what is collective, but continuing our seek for what is personal.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Halihena. And maybe after, if someone has questions for the students, you can also ask after the discussion in person. I can help with translating. Let's move to the panel discussion section, and Teemu will be leading the discussion.
Yes, I welcome Halihena back to the couch, and also my name is Teemu Matimpuro. I'm from the Finnish Peace Committee, by the way, just to introduce myself. And then I would like to introduce two specialists, or Syksy Räsänen from nowadays Sumut, but also Karin Mais from the nowadays University of Lapland, a researcher and teacher at the University of Lapland. And they both have written a quite nice article. For those who understand Finnish, they should go and seek it from the Lähi-Nyt website, where there is a 3-part discussion just on this theme that we are going to discuss, is the decolonization of these two colonized places. Please welcome to the So we will be discussing, as maybe you all don't know, but I think these are the two major areas. There are some smaller islands, etc., in the world that are areas that we call self-governed areas that are still under the 4th committee in the UN, where we should finally decolonize. And of course these processes have a lot of similarities, but also differences concerning the both are occupied, but also of course this occupation has also different forms in these two states. But first of all, I start with Halihena, that, you know, how do you think the legacy of the colonialism has shaped the struggles of the Sahrawi people today?
Thank you very much again for this panel discussion, which is, I consider, very important as a part of this visit to shed more light on these very important topics. In my point of view as a Sahrawi, but also as follower to colonialism history in our region at least, and in the rest of the world, Western Sahara is considered the last chapter of colonialism in Africa in its old version, but also it entails components of maybe scholars call the new colonialism, where exploitation of natural resources is one of the main elements of this colonialism used to be, but extractivism and intensive extractivism of resources, especially regardless of the international laws requirements, is clear, and that's what have been improved by the European Court of Justice. And also when we see old colonial powers supporting this illegal occupation. Spain has withdrawn without organizing a referendum as requested by the administering power from Western Sahara. No one questioned Spain why they have done this. And instead of organizing a referendum, they have handed over Western Sahara to neighboring countries to exercise their occupation. And the colonialism legacy is there, because when you see the American administration recognize Moroccan illegal sovereignty over Western Sahara, regardless of a clear argumentation by the international law that classifies Western Sahara as a decolonization process and non-self-governing territory, that its original people has the right to self-determination, tells you the whole story. When you see a French President Macron, weeks after the European Court of Justice said that Western Sahara is a separate and distinct territory from Morocco, comes to Moroccan parliament and says that the future of Western Sahara lays under Moroccan sovereignty. So which one we should take? Why we have built this international legality system? Why we have built this international order after the World War II? Because as human being, as humanity wanted these tragedies to stop. But who wants this to continue? It's the mindset that has been in the colonial people minds for many years. And that's why they are supporting now, despite all this clear evidence, legally talking, supporting the illegal occupation of Western Sahara. And that's why USA has mediated an exchange between Israeli occupation and Moroccan occupation. You recognize Moroccan sovereignty over Western Sahara, and we recognize Israel occupation to Palestine. So this is where colonialism cooperates and continues using their legacy to undermine the people's rights. And in this case, Western Sahara, as a last chapter of decolonization, of colonialism, have many interacted facts. I mean, when we're talking about renewable energy, for instance, if you allow me, I didn't want to take much time, but if you see, we as human beings are suffering from the climate change, and all of us want to find a solution for this. No one is against solar power in a way or another. I'm not a specialist in this, but we are all seeking renewable energies as alternative to oil and gas and all these problems created by these products for our climate and our environment. But seeing a giant like Siemens from Germany implementing renewable energy to extract phosphate in Western Sahara intensively, this is a way of colonialism, because they don't care about environment, they don't care about people, they don't care about future generation. The only focus is economic interests, and this is obvious in Western Sahara, and this is the legacy of colonialism, and this is the obstacle in front of the solution in Western Sahara and in Palestine and elsewhere in the world. And that's why now this is continuing despite all clarity of international legality. But we as Sahrawi people also know, are very aware of this, and we try our best as oppressed people to tell this story, and that's why we are here, to discuss this and to say and to tell you how we see things. And that's why we want also people to not forget about this last chapters of colonialism wherever they are, and to make things stronger, make more pressure, and speak out, and not to be afraid of speaking the truth and the legality, and trying to stop this from continuing. So in Western Sahara, this is very clear, and that's why Morocco continuing and obeying the international requirements, and that's why Morocco is unwilling to get seriously engaged with the UN process to find a solution. And that's why they have blocked the referendum solution, and then also Polisario proposal, and wants to impose only autonomy as one option, and which contradicts the international orders that we all as world and as a human being has built or agreed on, despite our observation on all this and the injustice that is there. But at least we have agreed that this can guarantee at least time of stability and peace for the whole world. And we are there, I mean, believing in this, and the power is with people at the end of the day.
Thank you. Maybe then Syksy and Karim, you have written this article that, you know, as we know, both colonialism have this sort of form of settler colonialism, but what are the differences between the Moroccan occupation and the Israeli occupation, the form of colonialism that they are using?
Thank you. So as you said, in both cases it's settler colonialism in the sense that they want to move their own population to the occupied territories and to annex them. But the difference between the Moroccan occupation and colonialism and Israeli occupation and colonialism, well, one important difference in this respect is that whereas for Israel the model is apartheid, so it's racial segregation, so that they want to keep a separation between Palestinian population and the Jewish Israeli population, and if possible to get rid of the Palestinian population. On the other hand, what Morocco wants is not apartheid but assimilation. So they want to absorb the population, so that and has argued that there are in fact no Sahrawis. You know, there is no Sahrawi people, as Jewish Israelis have also argued. You know, there is no Palestinian people. But when Moroccans will say that no, these Sahrawis are in fact just Moroccans, and they want to, you know, undermine Sahrawi culture, undermine Sahrawi identity, so that there would be, so that they would become Moroccans. So in a sense, so one close comparison in Finland is of course the Finnish colonialism with regard to the indigenous Sami people. So there's elements that wanting to get rid of Sami identity, trying to erase the Sami language and just say there are no Sami. In fact, these people are just become proper Finns.
Yes. Okay, but let's continue then. That as we know that in the international arena, the both occupations have sort of succeeded on certain amount, quite a lot of amount, to justify and sustain the occupation and colonialism. So what have been their means, in a way, how they could have maintained the situation? As we know that both were enlisted already in the 60s in the list of decolonized areas that we were waiting for the decolonization in the UN, and as we know, it has been endless process, and it looks like that nothing has happened to really decolonize. So maybe Karim, you could highlight a bit what are the means of these occupiers, as we know that we have other occupiers in the world, like Russia in Ukraine, but it seems to be that there's a lot of sanctions and all kind of regimes to punish and to try to pressure them to deoccupy or leave the country. But why in the case of Morocco and Israeli occupation, international community seems to be very weak, so-called international community, and especially why Finland is so weak on these issues?
Yes, I know. First of all, I would like to say that it was interesting that. That it was interesting that when we somehow started to reflect both cases and we wanted to find out what are the differences and what are the similarities, it was just after when Trump got out from the presidency. And now we are in the situation thinking about this again, and Trump is coming back soon. So it just somehow came to my mind. And it's exactly, I would just like to add what Syksy was saying about this idea that these are like countries without people, as if there's this idea of terra nullius, as if it's an empty land that one just can go and occupy. And why it is possible, it is of course in many ways different political and economic interests. And in both cases, and especially I know much better the Western Saharan case, but for example, the Western Sahara is really extremely rich from its natural resources, from its fisheries, from its phosphates. There has been even assumptions that there might be a lot of oil and gas and so on. And the occupying power is using those natural resources by giving access for foreign powers that are able to profit from those natural resources, of course, against the will of the people. We have to remember that according to international law, Western Sahara, for example, is occupied, and nobody has right to use the natural resources without permission from the legal representative of the occupied territory, which is of course Polisario. And Polisario, of course, has many times stated that they are against of any kind of exploitation of the natural resources. So, as you mentioned, why Finland, for example, is so silent. I think that rightfully Finland has been vocal when it's condemning rightfully the Russian invasion in Ukraine, for example. But then what are these double standards suddenly that we have occupied countries and territories such as in Palestine and in Western Sahara, and for some reason these doesn't somehow initiate similar kind of actions. And of course we know, we have written many times, I have been working 20 years in the Finnish Peace Committee, and we have written many articles about also Finnish companies exploiting the natural resources in the Western Sahara. Not maybe always directly, but indirectly, in the sense that they have been, for example, constructing different facilities in the occupied territories, which is already as such against the international law. Would you like to add something, maybe?
Yes. Yes, so the economy is of course a factor also in Palestine. So if, for example, if you think about the military aid that United States is giving Israel, you know, now billions and billions to carry on the more than they usually give to carry on the genocide. Then the vast majority of this aid, this is not money that goes to Israel. This is money that goes to US weapons companies that then send weapons to Israel. And so of course these companies have an interest in seeing this continue, because for them, I mean, there is exploitation of natural resources, including gas and oil, you know, in the occupied territories. But there are also sort of these sorts of bit more complicated economic interests. But then it's also about political alignments, because it's about power politics, and great power politics at its core is deeply irrational. And I think in this respect, it's instructive to think about. So of course, there's when Israel was established through ethnic cleansing in 1948 and the colonization that goes there. But if you think of after that, in 1956, Israel, France, and Great Britain together started a war against Egypt, and Israel conquered territories in the Sinai Peninsula and started building settlements there. And then. And the Israeli leaders were very keen that now they are returning to their historic areas and all the same that they talk about the West Bank now. But they had to withdraw because the United States at the time was against this annexation of Egyptian territories, so they withdrew and had to and then destroyed their own settlements there and the infrastructure that they had built. And in 1967, when Israel occupied again Sinai, Gaza, West Bank, Golan Heights, then it managed to get United States on its side by basically saying that, you know, we are on the same side. It's, to put it simplistically, but, you know, we are on the same side. We are on the side on the side of the West, against communism, and then later became, we are on the same side in the war on terror, and Morocco also has tried to play this card that we are your protection against Islamic terrorism.
Yes, and then maybe you have already a bit covered the same issue that, of course, we know in both cases the international law is very clear, and we have rulings and UN resolutions, numerous of them, like Halihena was just telling about this, the final decision from the EU court that Morocco doesn't have sovereignty over Western Sahara. So, in a way, is it just power politics, geopolitics that's defined that? Because in a way, as coming from Finland and learning the Finnish democracy, we always sort of have the basis of our democracy is the respect for law and independent judiciary, which is not politically motivated, which is not the case, for example, maybe in some other countries. But why do you think that the international law and all these resolutions have never ever, in a way, made any difference on the occupation?
Of course, it's about power politics, and if we, for example, look the case in Western Sahara, it's completely clear. Already, 1974, the General Assembly made the decision with the help of Hague, and there was no doubt that the Sahrawi people had right for the self-determination. They were using a lot of ancient materials for this decision making. They had, for example, Treaty of Marrakesh and from 1776, Treaty of Meknes 1779, which explicitly state that Moroccan kingdom didn't have sovereignty over Sahrawi people under the River Nun, which is actually in the northern than the current border between the Morocco and Western Sahara. And therefore, there weren't any establishment or possibilities to establish sovereignty over the Sahrawi people. So the international law is actually explicitly clear in the case of Western Sahara. Syksy knows better how it goes related to Palestine. And of course, there are different states who have different political interests. In the Western Sahara, it has been mainly France who have initiated their interests in the region. France have been, of course, the former colonial power in the West Africa in large, and North Africa as well. And of course, the Morocco is in many ways close to France, and many people, for example, are even arguing that Morocco has never even somehow separated from its former colonial power. There are still links which are in a way connecting two countries, and therefore, if we look, for example, in the international arena, if we look the different decision-making processes or different decision-making process within United Nations, it has always been explicitly and implicitly France, which has been in a way covering the back of the Morocco in the occupation. And of course, the Trump in one of his last acts during his first period of his presidency was, of course, to be the first country in the world that recognized the sovereignty of the Morocco over Western Sahara, and ever since there hasn't been any other country which conducted similar decision, and of course nowadays we are able to see that of course France is losing its economic leverage in the Western Africa, in Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, and so forth. So that's why they are trying to grasp on the natural resources in the Western Sahara, ever like more tightly than ever before. So definitely it's about power politics, and that's why we are worried about killings of some people in some parts of the world, and then we are not interested about other people in some parts of the world.
I'm very interested in Viking history, No, I'm still in the same panel with you, but but you know, Iceland during the Viking Age had you know, quite a nice system of laws, and for its time a just system of laws. And you know, they were recited 1/3 of them every year. So if you go to 3 years in the meetings, they had, you know, this parliament, and then you will hear them all. And there were courts, and you could take your case to courts, and you could have it heard. But there was no enforcement mechanism, which meant that in the end it was decided by power and violence. And in the international arena, it's partly this, and then of course you have economic power nowadays as well. So this because international the system is very similar. I mean, we have different kinds of agreements in international law and conventions and court rulings, but there is no body to enforce these rulings. But I think the difference, you know, with regard to ancient Iceland and world politics today is that, of course, then inside the countries there is civil society in many countries that has been sort of brought up to believe that this rule of law is important, and this is a crucial weakness in the current system of power relations, because international is based on the fact that the rule of law is that laws and that international law and human rights are tools that can be used. So you use them against your enemies, but you don't use them against your friends. But unfortunately, unfortunately for this, people are also brought up to believe in many countries that human rights and international law are important in and of themselves. And this means that then the population that there is populations that can pressure their governments and that put pressure on our international bodies that can achieve change. But this goes a bit further than your question.
Yes, maybe we continue from this sort of issue that, as we know, that for most of international community, the case of Palestine is very well known. And of course, I mean, this terrible genocide that is going now in Gaza, of course, that is explanation why it's now on everybody's lips, I would say, the situation there. And we are terrified of watching the news on daily basis on the Israeli authority violence against civilians, both in Gaza, West Bank, and now even in Lebanon and Syria. But then when we would walk out on the street and talk about Western Sahara, I think majority of people would ask, what Western Sahara? And we know that Morocco also uses this for cultural exchange and all that. The people or groups that travel to Morocco, they think that it's Morocco. There is no this kind of understanding of the occupation. And why is Palestine, or why Palestine has been much more visible than Western Sahara as an occupation? Maybe Hali-Henna, you could first.
Yeah, in my point of view, I think that in Western Sahara, because it was the last colony in Africa, and Morocco has gained momentum with, as I said, the end of colonialism and influence in many African countries, Asia, Latin America, and align themselves with Western powers in guaranteeing their interests, or at least one of their feet on the continent. That's it was very well explained by Karim when it comes to France's interests in Africa and why they are now more and more backing Morocco in its position. Palestine has gained larger solidarity movement since the beginning because of its kind, a total new state to build on another existed state. So it was widely spread among the world, and everyone is familiar with it. and it enjoyed larger solidarity movement internationally because of that. But I think also that in the case of Western Sahara, when comes the solution, around the solution in the end of 80s and 1991, the intervention of the UN in Western Sahara was stronger than in Palestine, my point of view, because they brought about a solution mediated by UN and African Unity Organization by that time, which is the settlement plan agreed by both parties. And both parties, or at least Sahrawi people who are nomadic and easily convinced of these fragile guarantees that maybe also has to do with the enforcement mechanisms of international laws, we naively believe that UN is a guarantee. A referendum would be organized in 6 months. And then Morocco started another round of negotiation around who is eligible or not, and Sahrawi Polisario Front Liberation Movement believed that this would come to bring about a solution. So we believe too much in the international community power, which did not exist. While in Palestine, other negotiations that may be mediation by USA, Egypt, I don't know, and then these agreements that the two-state solution would be the final solution. Also, Israel have invested in this to bring the Sahrawi Palestine case backwards to arrive with, to what we are seeing now of genocide and crimes. I mean, openly, and no one is objecting and no one is taking any actions. But in Western Sahara, I think also that it has to do with the European Union position, because immigration is used to manipulate all European states, because this is a big fear for you. This is another selfish approach adopted by European Union when it comes to the conflicts in North Africa. They are thinking that responding to requirements and requests from Morocco regarding these files would help. And it is not a solution for this problem. We should go to the roots of the problem of immigration, for instance. Africa wants to develop. African unions want stability. But every time African nations come to a new agenda, a new vision to develop their continent, this problem starts. We see now in Sudan, for instance, and in Western Sahara, the clear evidence of using immigration, and afterwards, greenwashing of occupation also is very strong when it comes to Western Sahara. Morocco champion climate change problems, green solution, and everyone is welcoming Morocco. No one would ask about these few people who are there. They are not seeing us. So this also helps too much Moroccan propaganda to say that Sahrawi never existed, and they have been always Moroccan. While legality, international legality has been said, it is clear, and Sahrawi people is struggling, have been struggling for all these years, and they are existed and they are there, and being few does not mean that they should be denied their rights. So I think also that urgent conflicts, bloody conflicts around the world may shed or affect the presence of Sahrawi conflict on the international scene. Because as I said, Sahrawi were very committed since 1991 to the peace process. And I myself, as a personal experience, I never imagined that United Nations, which is the whole world forum where all big powers sitting, would allow that Sahrawis do not enjoy referendum. I don't understand that Morocco, while a child and growing up, that Morocco have this impact. But growing up, understanding different interactions, and understands now why Israel is backing Morocco and why Morocco backing Israel. It's clear. It's occupation, the same practices and the same stand, and the same policies of elimination of injustice, and they go together. And that's why we as Sahrawis seek people around the world, because the alternative is that this main media controlled that spread this propaganda. Morocco is green power champion. Morocco is hosting World Cup football, I don't know, next year or the year after. All this is to wash our minds and forget about Western Sahara, and the Morocco would be presented like that Western Sahara has been there since many centuries, despite the facts, historical and legal facts. So I think that also the position of Arab nation regarding Western Sahara has affected our presence. To speak frankly, Arab countries are against Sahrawi right to self-determination, apart from Algeria, Libya at some time in history, Syria little bit. The other, though, especially Gulf countries, who have provided Morocco with finance to build, for instance, the wall that, which is a crime against humanity, that is built in Western Sahara. No one talk about it. Who financed it? Where comes the idea? It is a collaboration between different colonial actors, including Gulf countries. And no one is talking about the role of Arab countries when it comes to Western Sahara. While in Palestine, they have another stand. At least after this proposal of two-state solution, they backed the existence of a Palestinian state collectively as Arab League, and they refused that Sahrawi became part of the Arab League. So this also maybe helps in bringing Palestinian case more to the international scene and worked against the Sahrawi people to be present. This is what I can tackle now, that I present with, but I think also that the alternative ways, like our sitting now, is a way to tell this story and to have the links between the two cases. Even some, in case of Palestine, people they don't understand in many cases that Western Sahara is similar. It is an occupation and a non-self-governing territory and self-determination issue, and think that is, like other cases.
Yes, maybe you want to cover a bit about Israel, or maybe Syksy.
I think what you said about Israel being a new state that was established where there was already an existing country, Palestine, and that I think this is one reason why the Palestinian issue, Palestinian cause is more prominent, because it's both are colonial projects, but Israel is a European colonial project. So this first of all means that in Israel many Israelis see themselves as part of Europe, and the government actively puts forth this, that, as Benjamin Netanyahu said, to the east of Israel there is no more Europe. I don't know if you ever look at the map, and also many Europeans feel that Israel is on par with other colonies where European colonists managed to dispossess the local population. North America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, these places that are called the West. And so this is one thing, why it's prominent in Europe and in some of its colonies, former colonies. And there's also the religious aspect, of course, that there is big religious importance for Christian, Jewish, Muslim communities in Palestine. And then, of course, there is what you said about the Arab countries, because this was a place that Israel is a country that was established on the ruins of Palestine, on the destruction of the Palestinian society, on the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, and on this doctrine of really racial segregation and racial superiority. So of course people resisted that, just like the countries that were not ruled by European colonialists resisted apartheid South Africa. So that's one thing. But also, but if you look at if you look at history after 1948, when Israel was established, then for some time the Palestinian cause, the Palestinian question, the Palestinian issue, Palestinian rights were mostly considered just in terms of the refugees. The discussion was, there are these refugees, there should be justice, there should be justice for them. There wasn't the idea of a Palestinian state. The West Bank had been annexed by Jordan. It was officially part of Jordan. Gaza was under occupation, military occupation by Egypt. And this idea that there is a people called the Palestinians, that there would be again a country called Palestine, where Palestinians could exercise their self-determination, did not exist in the beginning. And it was brought about through Palestinian struggle, both armed struggle as well as non-armed struggle, cultural struggle, educational struggle, and so on. And especially then after the occupation of Gaza and West Bank by Israel in 1967, then this Palestine Liberation Organization managed to get a lot of money from Arab countries and establish itself, through armed resistance and become this representative of Palestinians. And at the same time, as this was happening and Palestinians were carrying out armed resistance, they also had these diplomatic initiatives, of course helped by Arab countries, as you mentioned. And then became, 1974, the Yasser Arafat, the head of PLO, spoke at the United Nations and had this incredible prominence there. So there is this colonial history, religion, but then there is also then this, decades and decades of work by Palestinian civil society, and also then supported by civil society abroad, to inform people about what is Palestine, who are the Palestinians, what is the issue of Palestine, and to put up the issue of Palestinian rights in international forums and locally in the countries. And this because nowadays we take for granted that people are interested in Palestine, but there are many places where there are really terrible conflicts that people are not interested in. So it's really also that there's been a lot of work put into it.
Really nice aspects, and maybe one layer that I could somehow bring in is about this geopolitics in a way that of course the role of the oil within the world economy, and then of course the Middle East and its geopolitics and how much always different conflicts in the Middle East has impacted in the oil prices and so forth. So definitely that's something which is interesting in Europe as well. I think in the Arab world it's also about their own internal issues, in the sense that if they start to support one colonial or how would I say, one colonial issue which has not been solved in one corner, then there will be a lot of other issues as well, only just to mention maybe Kurdistan and so forth. So definitely that's something that the governments are also afraid of. I really liked what you, Syksy, said about this Israel as the defender, the last defender of the West in the East and so forth. So maybe that's why they have also the place in the Eurovision. I think that if you make more noise and you are more recognized within the international level, maybe Morocco will be in Eurovision one day.
I'm afraid that that's the goal of the Morocco, to get in to this arena as well, because as we know that the EU has a special profitable relation only to two countries in the global south, and those are, well, Israel maybe not counted to global south anymore. It's Israel and Morocco, and both are the occupying powers, which is very strange that they have easier access to European market, etc., compared to the other countries. And maybe one thing that came to my mind, that when we read the Finnish media, when there's a Moroccan foreign minister visiting Finland, and previously when the Israeli officials or parliamentarians visiting, we think that they are the only. Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East, and then Morocco is the only democracy in the Northern Africa. that used to be, I remember, for example, in the case of Morocco, when our main daily newspaper drew a map of Northern Africa and all the countries, so the only which was labeled as a democracy was Morocco, and that's why the Arab Spring didn't affect Morocco so much as the others. So maybe you could little bit describe the democracy of Morocco, and maybe Syksy can then continue with the democracy of Israel.
Yeah, it's hard to tackle democracy. We're talking about an absolute monarchy. I don't know how this comes to Western media to grant this status to Morocco and Israel, and while also seeing their practices. In Morocco, we have only one side that spoke out pro-Sahrawi. This was النهج الديمقراطي, and now they are oppressed within Morocco because they said that Sahrawi has the right to self-determination. So democracy, when it comes to speak out and criticize the government, the monarchy, and journalists writing about a case, I'll give just one example. We as Sahrawis have been always described as hostages in refugee camps. And by the way, in comparison with Palestinians, maybe the other factor that diaspora, Palestinian diaspora, were everywhere, refugees, and that spread the word. Sahrawis went only to one place in Algeria, and this maybe also helped in terms of not being present in international scene. But yeah, a journalist called Ali Lamrabat visited the refugee camps and wrote what he have seen, that Sahrawis are free to move, they receive people, observers come to refugee camps, and he found a functioning state in exile, and then the king put him in jail because he spoke the truth. He spoke the truth, and now he's, I think he's in France, speaking openly about all these things. So I don't see any democracy in this. The king inherit this from his father. People has no choice to elect. We are refugees. We are oppressed people. We have one liberation movement, Polisario Front, but we vote for our Secretary General each 4 years. We vote for our representative in local parliament in refugee camps. We have our civil society active. I speak my mind against Polisario policies inside the refugee camps. I criticize my president and my secretary general in his own Congress, and I went back to my tent without fearing any oppression. I don't see how people talk about democracy in Morocco while some people, ordinary people, when want to visit occupied territories are denied access. Let's not talking about human rights observers. Let's not talk about journalists. So what you are hiding in occupied territories, and these refugees don't hide in their camps. So it is the reality, and this is, as you also well elaborated, this double standard policy. So it's easy to market that Morocco is democratic, but the reality speaks elsewhere, something else. When you visit Morocco, I know many Moroccans, I am in contact with many of them, and I see them struggling for basic rights, and they are being oppressed. Sahrawis are fighting, defending an ambitious right of independency, of independent state, of the right to self-determination, but some Moroccans only for water, when they speak their mind against a company, get put in jail. So I don't see how this comes. It is the same, I think, with Israel, as you as experts will elaborate on this, but Sahrawis have been improving that Morocco is not democratic. They have given misinformation, for instance, for human rights organization. Just one case, UN Human Rights Council have been informed by Morocco that some Sahrawi civilians who were killed at the time of the military invasion in the 70s were killed in Moroccan jail. But we Sahrawis have investigated them and found them buried in liberated zone in Mheri's city and issued a report and bring it to the council telling that Morocco is misinforming you. And this is democracy. When a human rights council of Morocco misinforming about a disappeared persons and giving false evidence that they were died in jails inside Morocco while they were killed by investigation, brutally, and buried in liberated zone of Western Sahara. And our Human Rights Council has led this investigation and put this. I don't see any way of democracy. And by the way, just to conclude, if Morocco is democratic, why they are denying 1 hour of democracy, of vote? It is a big contradiction. I don't see any reality. If you are democratic, you will not be afraid of the vote. That's what I have to say now. And
not to mention the human rights violations.
Of course. Of course.
Yeah, and of course we can have the questions at the end and very shortly, so that and of course I personally know that very well, as you are most welcome to observe any things happening in these refugee camps that the Morocco claims that people are hostages. You are free to go, you can access anybody, you can talk freely, you can disagree with them. But when I tried to visit the occupied territory, not by trying to sneak in secretly, but just flew with the Air Morocco flight to the El Ayoun, the capital of Western Sahara, I was denied entrance, and I spent 2 nights in the police custody, well, not police custody, but the police surveillance in the Casablanca airport, and I was kicked back to the EU, back to the Las Palmas. So I think if they claim what they are, they should be more open also for the observation for normal people to see how does their democracy work. But unfortunately that's not the case. But Syksy, you can maybe elaborate a bit about the Israeli form of democracy.
Yeah. So first of all, I would like to comment on this demonization of anti-colonial movements, that it's very similar in different cases. So up until the 1980s, the Israeli government said that the PLO is a band of cutthroats. This was their description, who doesn't represent anybody. And they said, except for the, agents of death that it employs, which was their terminology for the PLO, and they're terrorists and they don't represent anybody and so on. And that, the Palestinians, don't want them, and they keep in power only because they terrorize the population. And of course, the South African government said the same thing about the ANC. The population really loves being, under this apartheid rule. They're very happy. It's just that the ANC is instigating trouble and oppressing people and so on. But I think this shows the power. But this is, and of course, in many places, this narrative was accepted, especially in Europe. And this had to be overcome. And I think this is the importance of narrative, which is also about this, Israel being the only democracy. And of course, I'm not even going to go into, the human rights the terrible human rights violations, the genocide that is going on now. But if you look at, the idea has for some time been that people would say that, okay, Israel is democratic inside its own borders, and then there's the occupation, and that's somehow a separate issue. Like they would say, okay, United States is a democracy. I mean, we can also talk about that, whether it's functionally how democratic it is. But and even if they occupy Iraq, that's something different. But of course, the situation is that the occupied territories have been integrated into Israel. They're integrated in law, they're integrated in infrastructure, they're integrated in people's minds. So when you go to some of the settlements on the West Bank, the people don't know that they are not in Israel. It's not only propaganda, they really think that they're in Israel. And also, when you would go there, you don't see the difference. You know, there are just these roads leading there. So that administratively, legally, by infrastructure, it is all connected. It's not that there are two functionally, from the point of view of international law, of course, they're different, but functionally and the way Israel treats it, then you have one integrated regime of apartheid that takes different forms in different areas. That it is more severe, of course, most severe at the moment in Gaza. Then you have different in West Bank, different areas, East Jerusalem and Israel. But even if you talk about inside Israel, I mean, 1948, when Israel was established, it had a state of emergency that has been renewed every year since then. And this meant under the state of emergency, Palestinians, because when Israel was established, about 20% of the population was Palestinian, the same percentage now inside the internationally recognized borders of Israel. So the Palestinians were kept under military rule. So they couldn't move without permits from the military authorities. They could be imprisoned at will. They could be exiled at will. Their homes could be demolished at will, and so on. In fact, this system of military rule was then used as the model for the occupation. This lasted until December 1966. So in all of Israel's history, there's been only 6 months that they have not kept Palestinians under military rule. And when you have one part of the population, based on their ethnicity, kept under military rule, and the other not, and when the laws of the country state that this treat people differently based on their ethnicity, and now the laws of Israel even state that Israel does not belong to its citizens. Like the basic idea of a democracy is that the country, belongs to all of its citizens equally, and everybody who lives in the country, starts from the same basic rights. And very explicitly in Israeli law, this is not the case. It's said that self-determination in this country is only for Jews, not for anybody else.
Yes, and maybe we come to the inaction of the international community in these cases, which are a bit different, so that in a way we have seen the movement in the European Union and Finland, for example, for this two-state solution, that they support whatever it means. Normally they don't know what it means, but at least there is this lip service for, and now our government is split on the issue that whether we should even say that we support or not talk about that we would recognize the Palestinian state, like there are many countries that has recognized, and also in the case of Western Sahara. But when it comes to Western Sahara, there is not even discussion of this kind of move. So why is it so difficult to see that we are seeing two areas that are still in the UN under the process of decolonization, that we can't use the same sort of arguments for our position in these conflicts?
But there was something in Sweden, you remember, a few years back. But in any case, I don't know, I think we are, yes, thanks. I think that again, I don't know if we should also somehow leave our Eurocentric mind, and maybe it's not so important in the near future what we think in Europe or in the European Union. I think the world is changing, and even though we have right-wing governments more and more all around in Europe, and now even Finnish government have stated something that they might consider this autonomy plan as something that could be considerable or whatever. I don't know if it's really so meaningful anymore. I'm quite hopeful in the sense that the world is changing and the balance of power is transforming, and I'm somehow really hopeful that this change will bring more possibilities for the Sahrawi people, not only from geopolitical perspective, but also within the mindset of the majority of the people. And therefore, I would somehow skip that question.
Understood.
This idea of a two-state solution, so this was originally, of course, an idea of the colonizers. So Palestine was taken by military force from the Ottoman Empire by Great Britain in 1917-1918, and then they started supporting the Zionist movement that came in there with the idea of building, displacing the Palestinian community and building their own society instead of that. And this is the big difference between just immigration and colonialism, that immigrants come to live in the country and in the system, and it had happened in Palestine. Many peoples had come. But settlers come to replace the existing living society with their own society. So, and then when the Palestinians resisted, then there was the Great Britain, drew up these ideas that they will partition the land. That the solution is that you give colonizers part of the land, and then the population who live there, the colonized population, will give another part of the land. And this fit in with the idea of the Zionist movement, because they were building, not immediately, but very quickly started building this very separate society for themselves. And then this idea of separation was then endorsed by the United Nations, of course, in 1947, that there will be two states. And actually, it's very little remembered that there was, UN committee who was assigned this task of, finding a recommendation for what to do in Palestine. And there were two proposals on the table. One was one democratic state, equal rights for all, and all minority rights protected. And the other was this partition. And then the committee recommended this partition that the United Nations General Assembly then endorsed. And then from this on, there was the idea that the land would be split. And originally the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, had the idea that they want to liberate the whole land. And then they settled for this two-state idea that, okay, we will have a Palestinian state only on the occupied Palestinian territories. And then they gained sort of international recognition of this. And one reason why it has been maybe easier is that Israel has also been although Israel has never been serious about withdrawing from the occupied territories, but they could at some point have agreed to have some sort of an entity. In the famous words of Yitzhak Rabin, who was involved in the Oslo peace process, an entity that is less than a state on the occupied territories, because they don't want the Palestinians, they only want the land. Maximum land with minimum Palestinians. And in the case of Morocco, it's different. Morocco has no interest in a solution like this because they don't mind if they would manage just to assimilate all the Sahrawis and turn all of them into Moroccans. So I think this is one reason.
Could we argue also that now that the Finland has also moved ahead after 48 until today, so that they will support the two-state solution? Is it also partly to please the international audience or the civil society by showing some step that in a way recognizing the rights of the Palestinians in this sense? And in the case of Morocco, there is no pressure from what's going on, so that or the civil society that we have to do something. How would you comment this?
Yeah, I would say that the support for the two-state solution has in large part been support for Israel. The idea being that if we just say that it's only about these two states and then we have a Palestinian state, then the rights of the Palestinian refugees are off the table. The question of these Palestinian citizens in Israel who don't have full rights is off the table. And then you really don't have to address the question of decolonization, which was the original idea of PLO. If you go on, I was amazed when I wrote a book on Israeli apartheid, and for the first time I went, ashamed to say, but first time I went and read the full speech of Yasser Arafat in PLO at the United Nations as PLO representative in 1974. And he really talks about decolonization, one democratic state, all of these ideas, it's very clear. But when you talk about these two states, then you say that nothing has to change in Israel. You can have this colonial state, you can have these racial privileges, you don't need to allow the refugees back because we are having this Palestinian state. And of course then the fact that the Palestinian Liberation Organization moved to say, okay, we also support this, we only want a state on the occupied Palestinian territories, then said, look, okay, so everybody in principle supports this. Of course then at the same time, both the European Union and before that the individual European countries and the United States, have supported the occupation and made it impossible to realize a two-state solution, if it was ever possible, which I don't think partitioning and forcibly displacing people is as ever, just solution.
Well, I think we can, or you could maybe very shortly describe also, I think, the Moroccan policy of making this de facto occupation into the, it's sort of trying to use the time to make this de facto occupation into the judicial gaining over the sovereignty.
The same practices, as I said, what happened with Palestinians and taking them through all these stages to the two-state solution from liberation, ambitious project for a PLO to a two-state solution has also, Morocco has tried this with Polisario Front. And I think that Polisario is learning lessons also from Palestinian case, because we see how Morocco, when they came to invade Western Sahara, they were the first one to accept to share the land with Mauritania in the Madrid Agreement. And recently, just this year, the UN personal envoy tried to bring this partition solution to the two parties. Polisario said no. Yes, maybe people see us not realistic, as they say in their wording, sometimes idealistic by stick to the self-determination solution and the self-independence as an option for Sahrawi people. And some experts say that Polisario is not being realistic, is not being practical and all this. But we are very careful. We know that they want us to accept this, to use it against us, to impose other solutions. So Sahrawis are very aware since the beginning that we will lose a lot, and it may take a long time, and it may require many sufferings, but we will never accept to give up this struggle for self-determination, because we see, like in the case of South Africa, despite all they went through, but at the end, sticking to their fundamental rights has helped them too much and helped the solidarity movement to bring about their independence and getting this apartheid regime come to an end. The same case in Namibia. Algeria before that, it was a settlement colonialism for 130 years. But Algerian people has opted for continuing struggle, from traditional to political to peaceful to armed struggle. We know that maybe the armed struggle will not is not in itself a tool to bring about a solution or independence, but with time, as we have adopted in the other war, we can also adopt our, tactically talking, Morocco is maybe gaining from this cooperation with Israel. They have now the new technologies. They have drones. They are dominating over the liberated zones, and they think that they are gaining. But strategically, Polisario has opted for legal pursuit in front of European Court of Justice. And this was a landmark victory that stopped all this wave of false recognition from Trump to Sanchez in Spain to Macron, for the people to know that Sahrawi people are determined to reach the independence they want, but not the solution imposed on them. And that's why Polisario recently has refused to negotiate a partition solution with Morocco, because it was to impose on Polisario the same situation, to be equal with Morocco, who have already accepted to share the land with another power, which was Mauritania. Despite that, they say Western Sahara is Moroccan. But Morocco has happened that they accepted to share what they consider Moroccan with Mauritania. And this is a point for Polisario Front. And this, for us, as new generation, we champion Polisario. We stand behind them for this option. And even if we get vanished, but will not accept any kind of this tricky solution that colonialism uses for us to abandon and to forget about our fundamental rights. Otherwise, we will be consumed. And that's why Polisario Front and Sahrawi people do not accept to be Moroccan. It is easy for us. Thousands of Sahrawis, we are few, but we are different from Moroccans. Politically, culturally, socially, we are different. We are more close to Mauritania. If we are to be integrated with someone, it would be Mauritania, but we don't. We want our independent state, and then let's see integration among all nations. But to consume me because I'm few, this will bring us to a final end as a people. And that's why we are resisting, and we are opted to prefer continuing the suffering instead of giving up for such solution. And that's why Morocco has played on time, thinking that Sahrawi generations would give up the idea of independence. But Sahrawi generations who are grown up now in occupied territories and refugee camps are more radical to the option of independence more than elders. And by the way, Polisario Front, when it comes to realistic and practical, being cooperative, they have their own proposal in 2007, before autonomy plan. And in that proposal, Polisario guaranteed that if Sahrawis get independence, they will secure and guarantee interests for Morocco, economically talking. But also they would allow settlers who were born in occupied territories to vote with Sahrawis. And Morocco refused this to happen. So if you are, confident that these are your citizens, why you don't allow them to vote for for integration of Western Sahara? So Polisario also was clever to bring its proposal that the Finnish government is not dealing equally as autonomy plan. And that's what we ask for neutral nations like Finland in this case, is to take the two parties equally. We have also our own proposal. If Morocco have autonomy, we have our own proposal, and the Finnish government and parliament and parties need to study also our proposal and see. Maybe it would be more benefit for even Moroccans more than Sahrawis, because within Sahrawis there are objections against this proposal, and there are observations and reservations from many Sahrawis against this proposal. But this may be the ultimate option that Sahrawis can give. When you coexist with a settler, when you get independence, provide them with more rights, secure economic interests, this is a lot. This is a lot for original people who get oppressed. So, yeah.
Okay.